my kitchen. Today we're going to have some further conversations in my kitchen. And we're going to spend time talking about the women we come from. I hope you brought a favorite beverage. And let's sit a spell, talk about the matters of our hearts. Talk about what matters most. I hope you called a girlfriend this week and she's joining you either at your house or watching it at her own home. Who are the women you come from? Listen for a moment. Listen to your heart and mind, to those stories of yesteryear, to those stories of long ago. Pull out your old albums. Who are the women who influenced you so profoundly? Can you hear them? Can you hear them speaking to you? Do you understand the effects that they had in your life? What was it that they said you did really well? Can you see their faces? Can you see their eyes? Maybe you haven't dusted off your albums in a long time. Every once in a while I have to get mine out because I tend to forget. I tend to forget the voices of the women who have made my life so worthwhile. So I'm going to encourage you, and I'm going to share with you a few pictures of my own, of the women who so have profoundly affected me. These are the women, strong women. All the women I come from were very strong, sturdy souls. I have grandmothers, I have aunts, my mother, my mother-in-law, and now my daughters. I'm going to show you a picture here that I just love. In this picture, you see my grandmother. She's looking at her 4 daughters. It's not a very good picture. It probably was taken in the early 20s. I love it because my aunts are just proud. They're standing there. They're in their church best. One of my aunts has a hat on. And as I see my grandmother, she's standing in front of a little building that we call the summer kitchen. And she has her hand on her forehead, and I see such pride in her eyes as she looks at her 4 big girls. Have you stood there? Pride in your eyes. As you've looked at your daughters, this little humble farm in the picture that you're seeing right now was the farm that my grandmother had. It was homesteaded by my grandfather and herself. She raised her children there. In fact, I have a picture over here. It isn't on your screen. This is the very same farm that my mother now had. It's beautiful. I got to live here. I feel blessed for that. Dig out those pictures and look at them. These women cooked together, they canned together, and they quilted together. I remember a special memory, that of quilting time. Quilting came in the winter when it was so cold outside and it was bleak. The sun never got very high up on the horizon in those plains of South Dakota, not in the winter. In fact, the first time I took my husband home to Dakota in the winter, I think we were having noon meal, and he said, "Honey, where's the sun?" And I said, it's just right there. And he goes, "Well, that's not very high." And I said, "It's as high as it gets in the winter." But I remember clearly the telephone calls coming from my aunts that said, "We're having a quilting tomorrow. We're going to go up to Maggie's," one of the aunts in the picture, "and we're going to have a quilting." We'd take the table out of the dining room and they'd stretch this huge quilt. First they'd put down the bottom, then they would put down the fluffy batting, which somehow reminded me of the summer, and I was like lovely clouds. It made me hopeful again for summer. And then they'd put this beautiful, beautiful quilt top on. The next morning the call would go out to all the cousins that there'd be a quilting at Maggie's. And these women would come. Oh my goodness, they were amazing. They brought their favorite thimbles, their favorite needles, and little pliers. And let me tell you, honor was defended, and there was even criticism at the table by the size of the stitches. Women were known for the quality of their stitches. But what was most amazing to me at this quilting bee was the fact that as a little girl, I would sit underneath the quilt and listen to these women have amazing conversations with each other. Conversations about the disappointments, the challenges, the hurts, the worries. And you know what? Never, ever once did they say, you know what, Hazel, you need to leave. We're speaking for things that are only for adult ears. Never. Was never sent away. They'd can together. They'd cook. Told you already, they baked lots of cookies. And we were always there, surrounded by them. What women do you have in your life that have that profoundly affected you? Can you remember them? It's an odd thing for me, because you see, I only have one sister. I have like 30 first cousins. My dad was one of 7 children with those 4 powerful aunts. My mom was one of 9 children, and again, I have 4 aunties there. Strange thing happens in American culture, and I don't quite figure it out, but I married an only child, and I have, like I said, one sister. She didn't have any kids. So my children have absolutely 0 first cousins. So we adopt them wherever we can. I hope you and I can become friends. I hope that we'll begin to share each other's lives and understand that we follow so many of the same trails. I am an oldest sister. Maybe you are an oldest sister. And I saw myself as a great oak protecting my little sister. You know what? She didn't see it that way. No. In fact, one day I got a little book and I was reading it and I started laughing. And my 2 daughters were sitting there and I said, oh my goodness, listen to this. It said, older sisters are the crabgrass in the lawn of life. My oldest daughter went, what is that talking about? And my little daughter just fell out all over the carpet laughing. She goes, it's the truth, Mom, it's the truth. We are those people who try to protect our younger sisters, and sometimes we get in the way. Well, I left home at the age of 14 to attend a private Christian boarding school. Now, many of you maybe didn't do that, but it was something I looked forward to my entire life. It was a plan we had. Those 4 oldest aunts that I have, those powerful aunts, to them education was everything. So we knew that we would be leaving the farm at an early age to go away, to get a better education, to learn and make something of ourselves. So I left home and went 300 miles away at the age of 14. I got to go home every 6 weeks, and that was amazing. Again, those same aunts and my mother would just put out a spread in the kitchen for me when I got home. I was really naive. Let me see, I don't think I knew how to iron, so I saved all my clothes for weeks on end, and then my mother'd come by and iron lots of clothes. I didn't know how to study by myself, really. Curling my hair, well, that was also quite challenging. But I loved boarding school, because always there were girlfriends. Girlfriends to hang out on your bed, girlfriends to curl up with, girlfriends to laugh with. And I learned that sometimes if we don't have the family we wish we did, we can choose our family, because I got to choose my boarding school family. Like some of you, I went on to college, and again I moved further away. I went to a small Midwestern college in Nebraska. Now I was 500 miles away from home. All that was before there were cell phones. It's really interesting to think of how cell phones has revolutionized our life, isn't it? Kids are now so tightly connected. I see my kids tightly connected with somebody who lives across the United States. I'm a little worried because I don't see them looking eye to eye to the very person that's right in front of them. Anyway, it was different. We rarely called home. In fact, you only got to call home in an emergency, so you became a good letter writer. Do you still know how to write a good letter? Do your kids know how to write letters? Well, letters are so important. I bet you have some tucked away. I bet maybe you could even go into your little cedar chest or your little special place and find some letters that are still tied up. I have letters, last letters, from some of my own aunts, letters they wrote to me before they left me. Valuable letters. I think we should get better at letter writing. I went on to nursing school, and you should know I am a nurse. And that's one reason we're going to be doing a lot of health talks. But I went on to school in Denver. Now I'm 800 miles away from home. Wow, now I really needed my girlfriends because I got to go home for Christmas. That was it. Wow, that was a long time. Yeah, I look at the kids now and they're flying home every other weekend. It's like, this is so different, isn't it? Our world has changed so much. And yet it hasn't. It hasn't at all. We're still here in the kitchen. We still need our friends. After I graduated from nursing, I thought I'd go on for some crazy and wild challenge. So I went to the land, as my cousins put it, of fruits and nuts and flakes, and I found myself in Southern California. I went there because there were beaches and mountains and freedom and lots of fun. That's what I thought. But when I got here, it was a little different because I didn't know anybody. I didn't bring any girlfriends with me. I didn't really have family out here. I came out here all by myself. I did some really strange things in those first few weeks. First of all, I had my mother mail me every day, cut out of the newspaper, and send me the crossword puzzles. She did it every day. So about once a week, I'd get 5 crossword puzzles, and I would faithfully do them. I also, when I would go away in the evening, because I didn't know anybody, thought, well, if something bad happened to me, nobody'd know where I was. So I would write notes and leave them on my kitchen table, because I thought if I didn't show up to work, maybe they'd send somebody to find me. Talk about paranoid, right? But we didn't have cell phones. My mother knew I had made friends when I told her not to send me crossword puzzles anymore. But you know what? An amazing thing happened to me in California. Even though I was all alone, I found some amazing women. Women that were mothers of my new girlfriends. Women who'd invite me over to their house, invite me to participate in making meals, invite me to Thanksgiving. I didn't always know these women, and yet they opened up their home. They shared their wisdom. They shared their holidays. What an amazing thing we are to each other. Oh, well, boyfriends came and went. Yeah, they sure did. But always there were girlfriends. Early in my marriage, I read a very interesting book. It was written by Dr. Dobson, and he quoted something there that just was amazing to me. His question was, why are there more depressed women now than there used to be? He said depression is rampant. This is in the 80s. I have no clue what it is now in the 2010s, but we'll find out. But he said, women are so depressed. And how could that be? Why would that be? I mean, their husbands are more sensitive. Quite frankly, I would guess that if you would look through my pictures and find a picture of my dad or my grandfather, I don't think the men of that generation were particularly sensitive to women's needs. My dad barely knew where a cup was in the kitchen. I doubt that my grandfather did either. These were not men who knew how to change their children's diapers or comfort and nourish and nurture. They were more the hunter-gatherers kinds. Dr. Dobson contends that men are not less sensitive now than they used to be. In fact, they're more sensitive. So why? Why would women be more depressed? That's a fascinating question. Why? And he contends, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I think he's right. He contends that it is because we have lost this rich web of women. Women who garden together, who cook together, who can together, who bake, who do all of these things in the kitchen together. And that we have lost this company of women so that now we're home by ourselves, alone in our house. with our little children. We only have our husband to bounce things off of, and for some of us, we don't have that. We are by ourselves, alone. It occurred to me how important it is that we have the company of women. In fact, it isn't just important. It is absolutely essential and necessary. I hope through this show that I will encourage you to find more friends and to value them. Once I got married and had little children, my mother lived 1,500 miles away. Thank goodness my mother-in-law only lived about 50 miles away. Once I had those little children, I really needed my girlfriends. I remember my husband commenting one day when he came home, he said, "Oh my goodness, Hazel, I think you're on the phone all the time." And I said, "Ha ha ha, lucky you. I happen to know that men only have a few thousand words a day they need to spend. You've already spent yours at the office. However, I have 10 times that many. If I saved all of my words up all day until you came home and let them out, it would sweep you down the street and we'd never see you again." So he learned to appreciate my girlfriends. Perhaps you and I are not that much different. I'm a daughter, so are you. I'm a mother, you may be. I'm a wife, you may be. I'm a sister. I lived in a very small community of women, and I went to a very small church. I lived on the prairies of Dakota in a small farm, which is maybe a little unusual. What's very unusual about me, I went to a one-room public school, just like Laura Ingalls Wilder, complete with an outhouse. A little chilly in the winter, I'd say. As I said, I left for school early, but I was supported by a loving family. And then, as I grew up, I had wonderful women, professors and mentors. Can you think of some of those? Did you have a school teacher who believed in you? A librarian? Someone at the corner store who believed in you? Remember them. They are the women in your life. As I matured and grew up, I moved to a very large metropolitan area, so maybe you live in a city, alone, far from family. I attended a huge church. Again, you can get lost in one of those if you want to. I've become a nurse, an educator, and a speaker. I do have 3 children, so a boy and 2 girls. I have a pretty great hubby we like. We've lived both well, and we've had to live very frugally. I've had serious illnesses. Perhaps you have. I've lost dear parents and family members, and especially dear friends. But ultimately, I think of myself as a friend. I hope that's how you think of yourself. My mission, absolutely in life, is to inspire you, wonderful women, to live fully every day in the moment, not living with guilt of the past, for which there's nothing you can do. Nor do I want you to fear the future. In looking at the future and the things we worry about, 90% of it never actually happens. So how do you live fully today, giving of yourself in this very moment, feeling what you feel, smelling the lemons and the roses, and experiencing the wonders of the moment? About a year ago, I had an opportunity to sit at a beach house for a week and thinking of the values that women have given me. The first value I want to think about is my grandma Christine, and she's on a photo on your screen, I believe. Grandma Christine is my dad's mom. She's the one I never met. I told you already that she's the person who was so busy she'd come home and get her blouse unbuttoned so the buttons were done so she could run in and start cooking for her family. I don't know much about Grandma Christine. But you know what I do know? As we were planning a family reunion, I realized that my Grandma Christine was a romantic. None of my cousins knew it, but I looked at the date of her wedding, and she got married January 1, 1900. Is that too cool? Too cool. Love Grandma Christine. Then there's my Grandma Bertha. She's in this picture here. She looks pretty concerned. My mother tells me that in this picture, my oldest uncle was getting ready to go to the war, so she probably is. But as I remember Grandma Bertha, she was so compassionate. I remember her often just shaking her head with compassion, worrying about her children and her grandchildren. But the other thing I know about this grandma that's really cool is I get all of my creativity from her. My grandma Bertha was very poor, and yet I remember her one house she lived in, and she had sponge painted her basement steps. This was back in the 60s when we had never even heard of sponge painting before. She also made beautiful crafts out of tin cans. What an amazing person. From her, I gained compassion. Well, then there were my aunties, those wonderful 4 women, all educated, all school teachers with the exception of the oldest aunt, who's a nurse. They inspired me with a passion for learning. These women did crossword puzzles every day of their lives, and their favorite activity was Scrabble. And let me tell you, that was a mean game. Even when I finished college, I wouldn't play Scrabble with them because they were way too tough. The other thing that I know about these women is they taught me accountability. There was just nothing. You said you were going to do it, you did it. Well, I look here and I see a picture of my mother. My mother taught me many things. First thing she taught me was that hard work matters. She taught me that it's very important to provide for your family. My mother was a huge gardener. She quilted, she sewed, she washed, she ironed, she worked hard. She also taught me that cleanliness and godliness just might be connected. My mom, at 87, still keeps a spotless apartment. I also learned from my mother that all of us wish that the siblings, your children, loved each other as much as the parents love you. But that's not how it is. Back to this. These are my mom's sisters. They're all younger. From them, I've learned a lot of fun. I've learned just how to laugh from them. I think after my mother, they lightened up a little in that family. The last person I have a picture of here is this lovely lady. This is Opal. She's my mother-in-law. I don't know. You know all those mother-in-law jokes you hear? That was not mine. This was one amazing woman in my life. What she taught me was the power of positive words. I married her only son. It's pretty special. I don't know how it is for you, but I remember when my babies were little, I had 3 of them in 4 years, and they were like kind of all over my legs, and I didn't get anything done too well, and my house wasn't as clean as I wished it was, and I didn't make the fabulously nutritious meals that I wished I would, and I was just barely keeping up. And this woman would come down to my home. Oh, she'd say things to me like, "Wow, I don't know how you do it, Hazel. I don't know how you do it." Words of appreciation, I learned that from her. And the last picture is picture of my Aunt Emma. Aunt Emma was my nurse person. She was a missionary nurse left in the 1930s on a ship to who knows where. She went to India. What an amazing woman. And lastly, I have a picture of my kids. I want you to know that I have them, and they turned out well. But it isn't because I did a great job. It's all of these people have done a great job. I encourage you to figure out your purpose. What's your purpose for being in this world? If you wrote your own epitaph, what would it say? Mine would say, she was a good wife, she was a great mother, and she was a true friend. What matters to you most? A year ago, my daughter started writing a paper for her graduate school, and she had to tell her values, what mattered to her most. And she said, from my grandparents, I've learned that hard work is important and that it's important to persevere. I've learned that trust and confidence and confidentiality are so important because someone had broken hers. And she said, I learned that it's so important to have respect in a relationship. Well, that made me sit back a little bit and say, what do I value? And I want to encourage you today, when you turn off the television, I want you to figure out, what is it you value? What gives you the purpose that you're here for? I figured mine out after my daughter wrote hers. I thought, well, I better have mine figured out or she's going to ask me. And then, what am I going to say? So here are mine, A, B, C, D. I value authenticity. And maybe it's because I'm as old as I am. Don't care anymore. Like me. I want to be authentic. 2, I want to learn to be and be as present in this moment. How do I be? Not worry, just be. I value creativity and I highly value diligence. I do value hard work. That farm ethic has never left me. As I leave you today, I want to have you take a look at the women who have influenced you. Get out their pictures. Look at them. Write down what is it they gave you specifically, just like I told you what my grandmas did, what my aunts did. If they're still alive, would you do me a favor? Would you pick up the phone? Would you call them? Would you thank them? I mean, how often do we get enough praise? Pick that phone up. Tell somebody what they mean to you. If you don't have them anymore, and some of us don't, think of what friends you have, what mentors you have. Write down the 5 people who have most significantly impacted your life. Write it down. It's your number 1 job. Number 2, I want you to do something with that. I want you to pick 2 of those people. I want you to give them specific appreciation. If you can, I want you to drive over to their house in the next 24 hours. Look them in the eye and say, thank you. Thank you for what you brought me. Thank you for teaching me to be a romantic. Thank you for teaching me to be creative. If you can't do that because you can't drive over there, pick up the phone. Cell phones reach around the world. Pick up that phone. Give them a call. Give them specific appreciation. And lastly, if you can't do that, write a letter. I know how important it is. One of my girlfriends did this a few weeks ago. She found a professor from college. Found this person just before he left this earth. Thanked him for what he had meant 20 years ago in her life. She said it was profound. So, do that for me, please. It will make a difference in their life, and let me tell you, it will fill your life to the brim. So, until next time when we meet in the kitchen, I want you to stay well. I want you to be happy. And I want you to live abundantly, appreciating the women that have paved the path before you. Enjoy your life and live it fully.